So let's talk about how the body is our greatest teacher. And when we have this illusion of being stuck, a perception of being stuck in our life, how the body can help you get unstuck. So first I want to say, of course, again, that we're never stuck, that that's an illusion. It's a perceived reality that we're stuck because we're never stuck, but we have a perceived reality or perceived illusion that we can't process thoughts, that we're not thinking clearly. We don't know what the next steps are, so we feel like we're stuck. Well, so I'm going to give you a scenario, and then we're going to talk about how the body can help us work through this aspect. So there's a couple of things here. One thing is that you have a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And the second thing would be that you struggle with that exhaustion. And so you struggle with exhaustion and you just are not able to find the energy to be able to get up and take on clients and bring income in for yourself. So, first, let's kind of unpack all of that. So, autoimmune disease, the chronic fatigue and the fibromyalgia are both autoimmune diseases. And autoimmune diseases truly are trauma. When we have when our body is diagnosed or when we're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, it is because we have unresolved trauma. And so the body is there when we have symptoms of chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia. Our body is really giving us signs and signals that there's something within us that needs to be looked at. And so that's the chronic fatigue and the autoimmune, the fibromyalgia, that's that piece of the body. Now we can look at the mind fog, or not being able to formulate a plan. When we're living in survival or emergency mode, which we are if we are getting up daily and battling with emotions, battling with, the frustration of feeling like I just don't have the energy to make money. So then you have this stress about finances and about money, and maybe you have just enough to, afford to pay your rent, but there's still this low grade anxiety there because um you have the money for rent, but you don't have energy to generate income. So your body's in survival mode and in this emergency mode all the time. And when you're living in emergency mode or survival mode, all your body's resources is going towards that perceived threat that you have on the outside, because our body is perceiving that there's a threat. And so now we're only focused, and our focus narrows so much on our outside world to deal with the perceived threat that we have. And when we're in emergency mode or survival mode, now we can't heal and we can't create. We don't have that expansive energy. We're not in expansion, we're in narrow focus on the perceived threat. So that's the other part of it. That's the mind fog, or the inability to process and create a plan for ourselves. And so how can the body help us get out of that? So I have a method that I call body mind mapping and assessment. And what it is a process of really bringing our awareness and our attention to the body and to all the symptoms that we're experiencing. So really, I'm going to show you this drawing if you can see it. We are just drawing a really simple um, body drawing. Now, when I do this with my clients, I always tell them if you can get that the brown newsprint paper in the big rolls, that is the ultimate. That's the best thing to do because then what you can do is lie down on that piece of paper and have someone draw out your body. And then you have this huge life-size picture that you can now put up in front of you on the walls and work on it. But most people find that really hard to find. And so, really, all it is, I mean, even better than this little book that I just put together really quickly here and drew it out for you. If you took even, 6 pieces of legal size paper and taped it all together, you'd have a bit of a bigger piece of paper. But really, it's just like a paper doll cut out. And you want it bigger than this piece of paper. And so you just draw out the body. And now you're going to map out all the symptoms that you feel, but we're also dealing with 3 energy bodies, which is our physical body, our mind, and our aura. And so the first place I usually start with people is the physical body because that's where we're dealing with the here and now, and these are our symptoms that are tangible that we see in our lives every day. And I want you to put, or I want people to be able to put those symptoms into physical form. So turn that, turn the energetics of it into matter by, for instance, if you're experiencing, let's say, a migraine. So on this image, I drew a band across the head, and I made it black, and um, I would put maybe some little spiky lightning bolts or something around it. So we're mapping it out, and it's physical. So if, for instance, you say, I have migraine headaches that feel electrical but are really dull, and it feels like my head is being squeezed, that's when now we're going to draw that band that is feels constrictive. So then color it black. So you're giving it color, but you're giving it a physical form, which is the band held tight around your head. And then um, let's say the fatigue, let's say. So really it's hard to tell in my drawing here, but this is the battery. And down here I had only this color, so it's supposed to be red, and that's how much energy is in the battery. So it's pretty much all empty until there's just a little bit of energy in it. And so for that fatigue, your body essentially is the battery. So you could draw it in the form of a battery and how full it is. Excuse me. And then then I just drew some other symptoms. So let's say you have digestive issues, and so this is supposed to be a brick, and it's in my gut, so green for digestion. And then let's say on this arm, I get the sharp pain that feels like a lightning bolt going down my arm. So let's say you draw that in. So I mean, it was a really quick drawing. I'm not an artist, that's for sure. But so the purpose of this though is you are mapping out the body, the pain and the disease and the physical symptoms within your body. So for instance, with the chronic fatigue, really your whole body would feel like it's a battery. And whether that battery has very low voltage. And so you would draw your body as a battery. And then with the fibromyalgia, you would draw out what symptoms within the body you get for fibromyalgia. But you give it a color, but also give it a shape. So whether it's feels like a band tightening or a lightning bolt or a drum that's pounding, a jackhammer. It feels like a jackhammer's being, hammered into my leg or arm. Whatever those symptoms are within the body, you map out the body in that way. Then the next thing you're looking at is the mind. And because thoughts are energy, we're looking at the thoughts that are plaguing your mind. So these are thoughts that you think about often. So, for instance, if every day you're getting up and you have anxiety because you have anxiety over how you're going to make money, then you could, put a black dot somewhere in the head section and put a little squiggle and write above it, anxiety. How am I going to make money? So now you're going to do it that way. So now you're just putting those kind of dots in to map out the mind and the thoughts that are kind of chronic that you typically think about. So you would do that for the mind, and then for the aura. We have this energy field around us, and this energy field around us is truly wonderful because really it's like we have the quantum around us. And how I think about aura is I think about our aura as being, when it's balanced and it's full and it's all the colors of the rainbow. So really you could draw it like a rainbow around you with all these vibrant colors when it's in balance. And that means that, you have vitality, that your energy is high, that the situations in your world and in your life are, for the most part, really good. You have things that bring you joy in your life. You always feel love. You have pleasure in your life. And there's all these different things, and usually your circle of people is really supportive, your friends are great, you have these wonderful things in your life. To me, that's what I think about when I think of aura, but that's just me. But so for people that, let's say, might feel scattered, like their energy is broken up, I might draw a rainbow and then maybe some empty pieces, or even you can cut out in the paper a square, like there's pieces that are missing. And so really when you look at your aura or that rainbow, it might look really fragmented. So that would be something I would do around that. So by the end of this mapping portion of it, you would be able to put that piece of paper on the wall in front of you, excuse me, in front of you, and then you would be able to now do the assessment part of it. And so the assessment part of it is really going from looking at all of those three energy bodies and starting with the body, going from top to bottom, and now looking at, for instance, the migraine. So in this picture, we're going to look at the top of the head, and because the first thing is migraine. So now what I would do is with my clients is I would then ask them, okay, so when did you begin like to experience that migraine? When, how long ago did the migraine start? And so then, now you're looking at, okay, when did I have the migraine? And now we're also looking at what was happening in our life at the time that that migraine started. Well, it could be I fell down and I got a concussion and I started having migraines then. Okay, so that when you fell, what was happening in your life at that time? And maybe the symptoms now have lasted a year, for instance. And so let's look at that. Let's look at the time that that began. Or for the fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, when did that start? When were you diagnosed whatever ailment that you have? When were you diagnosed? And then really looking into what was going on in your life at that time. And what I find when I'm doing this with my clients is that they will always, 99% of the time, be able to tell me that there was something in their life that happened, either that led up to that diagnosis or something that was happening in that time. And for instance, it could be, at the time I was diagnosed, I was in a job and, my boss was very, very negative with me, very bullying, very belittling, and I was feeling like I wasn't good enough or that there was always something that they were complaining to me about. And so then what I might do is then, or then what you're going to do is that, okay, so looking into that, and more often again than not, what's happening is that it's that's that boss, and at that time that it brought up trauma from the past, from when we were a child, and that person had a mother or a father that was bullying to them, that they felt like they were always trying to do something for their parent to make them proud, but that they were always belittled or had snide remarks given to them. And so really now that boss is triggering that trauma. And so what happened then is that it's stored in the body. That trauma is stores in the body, manifests into a physical now symptom and disease, in fact. And so what's happening is that the body now is trying to show you by giving you these symptoms. And so until you are able to really look at that and say, "Oh, okay. So my diagnosis was at this point in my life, and I had a boss that was this way and that." And then when we look at, okay, can you take me back now to your childhood? How was your relationship with your mother, with your father, with your siblings? And typically I'm going to know that there's trauma because we're having a conversation when I'm doing coaching. And so I'm fact finding. And really, then the person, and so if you're doing this, um, for yourself as well, you're able to connect the dots that, oh, this is triggering this symptom in me. And I was just diagnosed with fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. And so I had to quit my job. And this was the start of this spiral down with my mental well-being and with physical health. And so truly, anytime I go through this process, as I go down, as we work through it, um, again, we can then, going to this battery and saying, okay, so your chronic fatigue, when were you diagnosed with that, which is most likely at the time of the fibromyalgia. And again, it's bringing up the past at the very root of that diagnosis is trauma, unresolved trauma, and the body now is giving you something. It's showing you that it needs you to look at that. And so the wonderful thing with this process is when we get to this assessment piece is that you're able to reflect on the time that whatever symptom you're having or the disease that you were diagnosed with, what was happening in your lifetime at that time, And then really when you look at that, and when you're doing this, of course, with a coach, is that then you can now look at what it's triggering from the past. And typically it's going to be triggering some form of trauma. And so going through all of that, now you can write down, beside this band at the top of the head, you can also write down on the other side, was working in a job where the boss was belittling me, bullying me, and, um, you know, and then you could also write down which my mother did or my father did or something from your past that it's as well triggering. Because again, an autoimmune disease is the body's way of showing you that there's something within you that needs to be looked at, that something needs to be dealt with. And typically then what happens is that when we don't recognize that or we're not aware of that, that it just gets worse and that these symptoms will keep keep coming up until we actually look at them. So, this is one thing where when I was working in the shelter, in women's shelters, for women and children that were fleeing domestic violence, is that what I saw at that time was, um, the big thing that was happening was a child would come in with the mother, of course, and so the mother would normally take the child to the doctor because the child was acting out. And the child was acting out and not listening to mom, having tantrums maybe, or just crying a lot, or having trouble sleeping or wetting the bed. And so the doctor then would prescribe Ritalin. And, that was very alarming for me because, when you think about it, that child is reacting to his situation, his or her situation. And wouldn't it be abnormal for them not to react and have this reaction to seeing violence in the home or hearing yelling and things smashing and crashing on the floor? Kids, when they're in a home where there's domestic violence, they are they're afraid, they're scared of that. And so when they get to the shelter, now they're kind of in a safe place and now it's almost like their system starts to really react and their body goes haywire and now they're going to act out because they don't have the capacity to go up to their parent and say, you know what, mom, I was really scared and I saw daddy do this. And so, really, we see this in the medical profession or in the mental health profession is that um, the thing that they want to do for these symptoms is simply mask them with a pharmaceutical. But what really needs to happen is, again, it's the body's natural way when we have an autoimmune is disease is that the body is showing you and telling you that hey you need to wake up and you need to deal with this. So then we have to be able to look back and start assessing where all of these symptoms are coming from, where this disease is coming from. And as I said, there's always 100% of the time when I'm doing this with a client is that they will always be able to attribute it to a trauma from the past, and that when they were diagnosed, there's a trigger there from their past trauma. And so you would go through the physical body doing that same exercise. And then with the mind, when you have the thoughts written out there, you start to examine those thoughts as well. Um, for instance, a thought might be for this person that's battling with fatigue that I don't have the energy um, to work with clients or um, or there may be a fear because this person now has taken so much time off that now there's a fear of them coming in. And so there's also having to deal with the fear of being seen, the fear of success, the doubt that people have maybe at not being able to do it. But also in there will be thoughts that are related to the trigger as well and to the trauma, because again, in this one particular scenario was that the diagnosis came when the boss was belittling them and bullying them, which was a part of their trauma from childhood. And so you'll still see that those thoughts are there. But what I find is that when you're able to when you're able to look at the thoughts that are these are thoughts that they they are aware of kind of consistently, because you really have to do a little bit of investigative work here, because most of our thoughts are at an unconscious level. But when you are putting your focus and attention, I find that, clients are able to really look at those thoughts and pick them up really quickly. Um, and then to be able to now connect the dots for, okay, you have anxiety, or you wake up with this anxiety, but your first thought in the morning is, you know, um, how am I going to make money today? Or, oh, I need to work with a client today. How can I find clients? So you can kind of take those thoughts, whatever it is, and be able to help your clients see back to where it relates to the trauma and how it's relating to the body as well. And then when you move to the aura, for instance, maybe they drew the rainbow and it's very dull, like the colors aren't vibrant and there's pieces missing. So then you do the same process for that as well and say, okay, well, let's talk about your external world. Um, so you feel scattered, you feel fatigue, which we know comes from the chronic fatigue. But let's look at situations where you feel that, excuse me, where you feel that you're more drained or that, you know, it's an opportunity to talk about, okay, what does your day look like from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed? And usually what I find is that there's a process of, okay, this is my routine. I kind of wake up grumpy, miserable to my husband or to my wife. Um, they go to work and then I typically, do the dishes, clean the kitchen, and then I'm exhausted by that time. Or I have to do this and I'm exhausted by that time. And so, kind of, you're looking at what their day looks like. And through that process as well, there's other things that come up that are perceived experiences for them that really, um, I'm trying to give you an example. Um, So really it's in the conversation. So when again, I wouldn't I wouldn't tell anyone to do this body mind mapping and assessment on their own at all, because really it's a period of, or it's a process of mapping it, assessing, but having someone there to guide you through the process and reflect to you. And so I find that when I'm doing this with a client, is that usually there's, something comes up that they may say, just throw a statement out there, and then you'll be able to stop them and say, whoa, whoa, wait a minute, let's have a look at what you just said. And well, not most, but a lot of the times they might not even realize that they've said it. Because I did have one client of mine throw out something which I stopped her, and she wasn't aware that she said that. So it's a really powerful process, but it's also better to do it with someone else, not to do this on your own. But the mapping part is really great to do on your own because again, when you have this, sheet that's filled with colors and shapes and words around it, you can work through that part on your own and really, start to look at when your symptoms started, when you were diagnosed, what was happening in your life. Um, does it remind you of something else? Does it remind you of an event from the past that, you know, and when you have trauma. So if you have trauma, now you can go back and look at that piece of your trauma, but you're doing it as a willing participant. So it's not like you're being forced to go back to that, but you're just going to go back to that time and look at what was happening and how then that would have made you feel. Another thing, I'm just kind of, it's an aside from the body, but is ancestral lineage. I also would have people look at um, especially if it's to do with relationships or divorce or when they're leaving an abusive relationship or a difficult relationship, is to look back at first, I might ask them, what was the relationship between your mom and dad? And then how was your mom? How was your dad? How was it, were you alive or sorry, were your grandparents alive when you were a child? What was that relationship? Or even just to do a little bit of research into, your parents' parents and what was happening there for them. Because really, that's then you're able to kind of look back at that lineage and you know, how your behaviors and the patterns in your lineage are really affecting your life as well. But that's kind of just a little aside there from what I'm talking about. But so when you're going through the body mind mapping and you're looking at that, now in you're able to see the symptoms in your body, how, like where pain is, what it looks like, what it feels like, and you're able to um, assess that now to see where the roots are of this disease. And when you've gone through that process, and you have this picture up in front of you in the wall, now you can every day take one of those symptoms and you put yourself in a meditation and you're visualizing, for instance, let's just say that you drew a drum in your head because you get these pounding headaches. Now you're able to go into a meditation where you're focusing on this drum in your head and you see it shrink and shrink. And so you're intentionally shrinking this object now that you've given physical form to your ailment, and you see it shrink down to the point where you can just simply blow it because um yeah, blow it right off the picture. Because really what it is all of these things within your body are created because of is created by you. Is your thoughts are creating it. Your body, your senses and feels and takes in all this um perceived thought and on an energetic level that then in turn settles within the body. And so, again, an autoimmune disease is because there's trauma and it's the body's way of giving you a signal or a sign for you to pay attention to something. But then now looking at your thoughts around on the body mapping piece is looking at the thoughts that you're thinking of and the thoughts that you're telling yourself. And so then then as well, I'll ask the person to tell me what their day is like. What does a typical day look like for you? So I want to just put the body mapping piece just to the side for a minute and talk about what I call the five pillars that interconnect, that have everything to do with the direction that your life is going, or how you direct and guide your life. Number one is your environment or your circumstance. Your circumstance is your environment. So your environment is the house, your home, where you live, who you're living with. It's your debt, it's your bills, it's your, yeah, that kind of stuff. So it's your environment, things that you can control, but then there's also your outer environment, which is the state of the world, is natural disasters and stuff that are beyond your control. And then there's emotions, and emotions, thoughts, actions, and outcomes. And so, really, I have my clients go through that as well. And that's why I get them to um, tell me about their day, what's typical for them. Because if you're first in a home where maybe your husband is triggering your past trauma because you have a husband that is belittling you or bullying you, um, stuff like that. Well, you're with your husband or your wife, so that's part of your environment, and really, it's a piece where you can't escape for now, or it's dealing with your diagnosis or your physical symptoms is another thing. So, waking up, what's the first thing you do? um, you may get up and you make yourself a tea and you sit down and you read the newspaper, and then you feel yourself getting grumpy. And so now your thoughts go to, how am I going to make money? How am I going to continue on with my business? I have no energy. Um, Whatever thoughts that are going through your head, and then now your actions, you're going to react to those thoughts. So maybe it's, I just need to go to sleep. And then the outcome of that is going to be that, your day is gone, that you didn't move forward. So then there's that feeling of perceived being stuck. So then, um, so then I always then say to the client, or say to the person I'm working with, is that if you're going to change your reality, you have to essentially change your personality. You have to change who you are, how you're relating to your world. And that seems like it's a really big thing, but it's really not. So it might be, for instance, when you wake up, instead of thinking about, oh, how am I going to bring money in? Today you're going to start thinking, you're going to switch and be consciously aware and being the one who is guiding your program here, not the one just letting it drive itself, right? You're going to get up and say, I'm so grateful that I have a roof over my head. I have another day and I'm excited and feeling that expansiveness of, wow, it's a great day. So I may tell them, you start off that way, then go get your coffee. Don't read the paper. Just sit down, don't pick up your phone. Now you're going to meditate or do a meditative visualization, where now you're going to focus on pulling up your energy from the lower energy centers up to the top of the head, which is our crown, our connection to source and divinity. And you're going to think about a time in your past where you felt grateful, something, whether it was graduating high school or having your child. Just put your body into that state, into that emotion of feeling gratitude, and then visualizing how you want your future to be? What does your future self look like? And typically with the people that I work with, it's going to be, I have divine health. I have perfect health. I no longer feel any of these symptoms. I'm creating in my world. My mind is always at ease and it flows, and ideas are generated with ease into my life. And so when they're then in that spot, to hold on to that vision and to continue to stay in that state. And then when they come out of it, now, every day doing that, and I have what I call the 5 minute method where they can do that quickly within 5 minutes. And doing this every day, that is going to change your state and elevate your emotion and help you to put yourself in the future instead of in the past. And that's exactly what we want to do. And so, really, that process of working through the physical symptoms, the aura, the vitality and joy and their surroundings, and then to be able to look at their thoughts and really switching all of that. But it does, you do have to go back and look at those points, those pivotal points throughout your life where your body is showing you via a symptom, via a disease, how it's showing you that something needs your attention, demands your attention right now. And so that's how we can utilize our body to help us become unstuck, or sorry, unstuck with that perceived illusion of being stuck. But it works all the time. Your body is always telling you, anytime there is a pain in your body, or whether it's indigestion, an acidic stomach, um, whether you feel like you're moving slow, there's always something that needs to be looked at. And whether it's okay, maybe, if you're feeling acidic in your stomach, even just, as simple as stopping and going, what did I just eat? Well, whatever you just ate didn't agree with you and it's producing acid in your body. So that's, again, your body is showing you and telling you that there's something that needs your attention. So remember that you're never stuck. Um, feeling stuck is just an illusion, and the body truly is your best teacher and the greatest doctor, psychologist, because our body is always going to tell us when something's not right, when there's danger, or when, something in from our past is affecting us. And we don't want to mask it with a prescription. We want to go back to that moment of trauma and heal from that and work through the process of healing. But you really can heal the body, because if your thoughts can make you sick, which it can, your thoughts can also heal you and make you well. So thank you so much today for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.